SHW. This is our wrestling.
This is insane what we're seeing right now.
We're going out tonight. It's been a long, long time. Make sure I look just right. It's going down.
Heads up, here comes the strap.
All hail the queen!
Another spear, will it be enough?
No, not this
like
way.
this, not like
Come
this,
on.
no.
This is just bedlam right now.
Hey, what is going on here?
Let's start this party, then I'll feel alright.
You've got to be kidding me.
Holy cow.
And now, the voices of SHW. Brandon Benefield, Gerard Bonner, and Diana Michelle.
What's going on, everybody? It is that time of the week, time for the SHW podcast, SHW. This is our wrestling. I'm Big Double Brandon Benefield, joined with GB Gerard Bonner right here, also sporting the brand new shirt.
Yes, new merch.
Where can you pick that up, GB?
You can pick that up right now at prowrestlingtees.com/SHWpod. It's a great thing, and the brand new shirts are here. We're excited, and you can definitely get a shirt right now. So by all means, you can head over there, and you can do that while you're listening to us. Just open another tab or whatever, and go ahead. prowrestlingtees.com/SHWpod. Grab a brand new shirt representing your favorite podcast.
Hey, and while you're exploring the World Wide Web, doing what all you do, and I don't need to know everything that you're doing, but just know that you can go to all the different social medias and follow us at
Absolutely.
SHW Pod. Where is it? Right
Boom.
there.
It's right there on the shirt, right
We're on
right there.
Facebook, Twitter,
Yes.
Instagram, YouTube.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
at
yeah.
SHW Pod, and you can check us out every Friday, just like you're checking us out right now. So we are
Absolutely.
coming off of a big time show that happened last Friday, SHW 36, and should we just jump right in and let's talk about what all went down, man?
Let's jump in. It was a show that's had a lot of people talking. So let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go.
Absolutely. Well, let's just talk about the matches that took place first. And there was definitely some other stuff that had people talking that we definitely want to get into. So don't go anywhere,
Absolutely.
because we will get into all that kind of stuff here in just a
Absolutely.
little bit. But to everyone's surprise, the day of the show, that afternoon, it was announced that what we thought would be the main event, the final match of the show, was going to kick off the show. And of course, I'm
Insane.
talking about the title match between Owen Knight
Mhm.
and Joe Black.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I was shocked, and I think that just spoke to how big the night was going to be. I don't think we've ever had a show that began with the SHW title on the line. So we knew it was going to be big, and I mean, these guys absolutely went for it. And it ended up in, of all things, a double count out, which I was just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And that just was the beginning of a very unique night. And you can probably tell them the rest that happened on that one.
Well, and so, yeah, of course, the GM comes out. They both guys get,
Mhm.
it's a double count out. And
Yeah.
they end up getting thrown into the main event, which the main
Mhm.
event was going to be the tag title match.
Yeah.
All-Star Special getting another shot against Tech X for the SHW tag team titles. And all of a sudden, that became a three-way or three-team match.
Mhm.
And the third team all of a sudden became Owen Knight teaming with Joe Black, the guy that he just faced in the opening match.
They had to work together.
Well, and that was kind of the deal. The deal was, hey, I'll give you guys a rematch in a steel cage next month if you can coexist as a team tonight in the main event tag team title match,
Yeah.
which we'll get to here in a few minutes. But
Mhm.
that whole idea was crazy. Of course, we always joke Gary's going to Gary. Well, Gary came out and he Gary'd right off the bat.
Right off the bat.
And maybe said some things that got people a little riled up, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But
That too.
anyway, so the second match of the night was another tag team match that we were really very much looking forward to. Kevin Ryan teaming with Dylan McQueen, taking on Adam Priest and Jordan Kingsley. And I think it lived up to the hype up into a point
Mhm.
when something terrible happens, something that happened that we never hope happens at a show.
Right.
And that is Kevin Ryan. And if you happen to follow him on social media or follow the Southern Honor fan page, he decided that he wanted to post the video of,
Yes.
of the instance when his knee buckled He has a
Mhm.
torn meniscus.
Mhm.
I don't know the exact details of the injury, but I know it's going to be quite a recovery time for him, and
Yes.
we hope the best. And
Yeah.
he's in our thoughts, of course. But the match up to that point, GB, was a pretty solid match.
It was a very solid match, an intense match, four guys who really have jumped into this war with each other. And we knew it was going to be physical. We knew it was going to be intense. We did not know, obviously, no one knew that kind of injury would happen. And, on one hand, there was concern that perhaps he might have broken his leg. That's what he thought initially. Thankfully, we have found out that it's not a broken leg, though a torn meniscus by no means is an easy thing to deal with. So
Yeah.
certainly our thoughts and prayers are with Kevin Ryan and his recovery. And I want you to remember that point as well. We'll come back to that later.
So, following that match, and I think things got shuffled quite just a little bit because that match got cut short. I
Sure.
believe what was going to happen was Gunner was going to come out and do a little promo and
Mhm.
call Tank out, which
Yeah.
he ended up doing. But prior to that, we got another tag match, which was
Mhm.
the Washington Bullets.
Yes.
John and Trey making their return after about a year away,
Mhm.
as well as Matt and Joey Lynch, who were also
Yes.
making their in-ring return. Of course, they
Mhm.
surprised everybody when they showed up last month unexpectedly, but they had
Right.
their in-ring return at this show, and you had two brother teams, Matt and
Mhm.
Joey Lynch, John and Trey Williams,
Yeah.
and these guys, both teams been around a long time. Both
Mhm.
teams considered some of the best teams in the South,
Right.
Southeast, maybe even the whole country,
Yeah.
and put on quite a show.
They absolutely did. And it was incredible to watch. Again, two brother teams, one team being the Washington Bullets that we just hadn't seen in SHW in about a year, but they've still been tagging and working around the country. The other team being the Brothers Lynch, we had not seen, not just in an SHW ring, but they had not been wrestling. They've been, family man and doing all kinds of things. So the big question was, would they still have it? Is there ring rust? Could they still put it together? And they proved why they were the inaugural SHW Tag Team Champions with a big victory. And we'll hear more about that just a little bit later. That seems to
Absolutely.
be the theme, right?
Yeah, if you're just tuning in, just stick around. We got some stuff
Stick
coming up.
around. Yeah.
So Gunnar Miller, as I mentioned, did come out and cut a promo and calling out Tank and Dan Wilson once again.
Mhm.
As the last few months have been kind of going back and forth. These two guys have been playing mind games with
Yeah.
Gunnar, showing up on the big screen, interrupting his matches. He called him out last month to no avail. He called him out again this month. And to everyone's, I don't know if delight's the right word, surprise.
Surprise for sure.
They were actually in the building. Well, we weren't sure at first as Dan Wilson comes down. And by the way, he makes my throat hurt just listening to him.
Yes.
He's got that gravelly voice, and he's screaming on the mic when he's coming out, and then he's cutting this promo, and the whole promo, he's got this gravelly, screechy voice. Like, oh man, it just makes my throat. I wanted to pop in a throat lozenge as he was talking.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyways, as he's talking, a hooded figure gets in the ring, tries to attack Gunner. Gunner delivers a spear. We're not sure. We're thinking it's just, some lackey, because that's happened before where somebody dressed like Dan Wilson tried to attack Gunner. And of course it didn't work out for that guy.
Right.
What turns out, this guy in the hood ended up being Tank.
Yeah.
And so one of the most disturbing things I think we've seen a lot of craziness at SHW.
Mhm.
We've seen a lot of craziness in professional wrestling.
Yes.
But one of the craziest things and most disturbing things, I don't mean to snicker. It's not a snicker. It's more of a shock, like a laugh out of like, I'm stunned that I actually witnessed this.
Right.
Was a plastic bag, like a grocery bag, being put over the face of Gunnar Miller by Tank and just trying to suffocate the guy. And at that point, GB, you've said it on commentary. It's like, this is illegal. If this was outside of a wrestling ring, this was out on the street, this guy'd be arrested.
Absolutely.
And even in the ring, I felt like, do we have any cops here? Because
hello, we
arrest
needed
this man.
them.
Yeah, we needed them.
Yeah.
Luckily, they finally let up, and at some point during that melee, if I'm not mistaken, Reverend Dan Wilson said your challenge has been accepted.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know exactly what that meant. Does that mean there's going to be an official match at some point? Will it be next month? Will it be sometime down the road? You know what I mean? Like it wasn't super clear. I hope there's a
No.
match because Gunner's got to have his shot to get a little vengeance here.
Yeah, he definitely deserves revenge. I mean, we've seen a lot of people do a lot of things, sneak attacks and all kinds of things, but suffocation is on a completely different level.
Insane.
And I know sometimes people don't like each other and all this jazz, but to suffocate somebody, ooh, yeah, that's a lot. So I can imagine Gunner is going to be definitely looking for Tank somewhere, somehow, maybe even before SHW 37, because this is an attempt not just at ending a career, but at ending a life.
Yeah. I mean,
I just, yeah.
and Gunner's, family, like sons
Right.
in the crowd, like
Oh,
it
God.
was, it was
Yeah.
rather disturbing,
Quite.
to say the least.
Quite.
And if that wasn't crazy enough, then we had the no holds barred match followed that. Of
Yeah.
course, Cruel and our pal Sal had a match.
Our pal Sal.
They had a match the month before,
Right.
right? And then this month, Cruel decided to he wanted to get a little revenge because he lost unexpectedly last month. And this month they made it a no holds barred match, which I feared for the life of Sal. And but just like he surprised me last month, he surprised me this month too. I mean, that guy, and I don't know if it's because he's got some screws loose. I don't know like exactly what it is. If you ask Diana, Diana's like, well, he's so crazy that he just can't feel the pain. He can't accept
which
that
is highly possible.
It might be. I don't know, but he did not hold anything back. He came out. What was the outfit he had on the trunks? What was it?
Yeah, the whole Mega Powers thing, right?
Mega Pal. That's what it was.
Mega Pal. That's right. And pretty creative. He certainly summoned the powers and the forces of the Mega Powers, and it was almost enough, but not quite, to overcome Cruel. But it was crazy. And you mentioned Diana. We miss you, Diana. Can't wait to see you again soon. Yeah,
absolutely. Wish she was here, but hopefully she will be back with us next week.
Yes.
Speaking, how about this? Sal getting a little fresh with Brooklyn.
How about again? We saw a lot of unexpected things last Friday, and that was one that was not on my bingo card. And so I just went, "Oh, you really want Cruel to be mad? Got it."
Apparently. Well,
that's a good way to get to him.
Yeah, that would do it. Faux show. Well, here's a match that we were looking forward to. We had been looking forward to, but for the third month in a row, the big behemoth match did not take place. I'm talking about Judas versus Cyrus the Destroyer. Now, Judas did not have the night off. He still had to wrestle. There was a replacement. Cyrus couldn't be there, unfortunately. And at the last minute, a gentleman who happened to be on set filming in Atlanta for the Stars series Heels. If you didn't realize, Brady Pierce is a part of that show. And we haven't seen Brady Pierce in over a year, right?
Right.
I think over a year. And the last time we saw him was getting attacked, getting choke slammed, getting hit with a chair by none other than Judas.
Yes.
And so apparently he got called at the last minute. He was chomping at the bit. He jumped at the opportunity because he's got some unfinished business with Judas. And I think that came in, it didn't work out that way, but at the time it was in the favor of Brady Pierce because you have Judas who's prepared for someone else.
Right.
And not expecting this guy that, again, and I think I said this on commentary, Judas, that probably happened with Brady Pierce, and Judas probably forgot about it and never thought about it, never thought twice about it. However, on the other hand, you got Brady Pierce, who's probably been stewing for the last year, and remembering how he got put out of SHW at the hands of Judas. And so, I got to tell you, it was a great match. And one thing I mentioned to you was you forget just how big Brady Pierce is, because not a lot of guys can go toe to toe and eyeball to eyeball with a guy the size of Judas. But Brady Pierce is one of those few that can.
He is one of the few that can. And, you forget who else knows Judas in the wrestling industry better than Brady Pierce? All the time that they spent together as a tag team in Lethal Poison. And I'm sure that the last person that Judas thought he would be seeing last Friday was Brady Pierce. And it ended up being a great match that ended up seeing Judas having to resort to some underhanded tactics that we're not accustomed to from him. Not that he's a fan favorite and one who plays by the rules, but he usually leans on his power, his strength, and his might to overcome his opponents. This time, he leaned on a low blow, but that's what it took for him to beat somebody who knew him that well. So that says an awful lot. And if Cyrus was paying attention, just more notes for him to take down for whenever these two actually finally meet.
Yeah. And something we were wondering, like, will we finally see that match next month? Will Brady Pierce be back? We just don't know. We don't know. Following that match, though, was a match that I've been hyped for ever since it was announced.
Oh, yes.
We talked about AC Mack winning the IWTV World Championship a few weeks back at the Southeast First show. And just still, like, going back and watching clips of that, watching the promo afterwards gives me chills. Having the pleasure of actually being there next to the ring as all that was going down is just a very cool moment, and something I will not soon forget. And as cool as that was, what was even cooler a couple weeks later was that he's defending the title for the very first time in an SHW ring against the Savior, David Ali. And I got to tell you, man, it lived up to the hype. It lived up to the hype for a world title match. What do you think?
Absolutely did, and you throw in the fact that these guys literally began training together at the same school on the same day in the same class. It ends up being their 6-year wrestling anniversary, and they're in a ring battling for a world championship. You couldn't write a story better than this. And so it was an incredible match with another weird twist at the end, which, after the match was over, they kind of hugged each other, what seemed to be an embrace. You had Mac kind of turn on Ali, and then Ali literally, it was like a switch flipped, and it was like he became the evil savior again and went to punt and did punt the champ, and it was just like, wait. So I don't think we've heard the last of this battle between those two. I don't know what happens in the future now that he's a world champion. Mac obviously has contractual obligations literally around the country and the world, being the champion of all things independent wrestling. So this is going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out.
But he'll only defend the title down
in
south.
the South. That's right.
Because I believe I saw a promo he had earlier this week. Oh, I forget what city it was going to be in. It was somewhere up north, but the key there was the title's not on the line.
That's right. That's right.
Because if you want a title shot, you come down here. And he also reminded everybody that, hey, when I come up there, you're flying me Delta.
That's right. By the way, Spirit and Frontier have signed a merger, which I was just like, wow, great.
I think they were watching Mac's promo and they heard themselves.
So too.
They heard him throw them under the bus a little bit.
They're like, well, we'll make a bigger bus.
We need to step up our game, apparently.
So thank you for that too, Mac.
Yeah,
he can take responsibility for the merger.
If we want to fly around the IWTV World Champ, we got to step up our game.
Exactly.
Well, that was followed up by our main events. And again, we said this at the show last week and even on the pre-show leading up to it, that this was kind of a co-main event night because you had the SHW title, you had the IWTV title, and you had the SHW tag team titles. Well, the last match of the night, I'll say the main event, but like I said, it was kind of a co-main event.
Yes.
It saw All-Star Special getting another shot at Tech X, which was supposed to just be a one-team-on-one-team matchup.
Right.
And as we mentioned earlier in the night, it turned into a 3-team matchup. And the third team, to everyone's surprise, was Owen Knight and Joe Black, which on paper is an amazing team.
Yes.
Right? But
at
this time, they just can barely coexist, you know, with the feud that they've been having. And But the deal was, Gary said at the beginning of the show, next month you get each other in a cage for the title
Right.
if you can coexist tonight in the main event in a tag team match. So
Mm-hmm.
to their credit, they kept it somewhat together throughout the
Yeah.
match.
Somewhat.
Let me just back up a little bit. I want to give props to All Star Special. They put up a heck of a fight. It was their 1 year anniversary. They came
Yes.
out to Eye of the Tiger.
They sure
And
did.
that got me pumped up for them.
Mhm.
I was like,
Yes.
what a great song to come out to when you have a title match.
Yes.
You got that Rocky vibe going,
Mm-hmm.
but it just wasn't enough. Unfortunately, they couldn't pull it off. Tech X, I mean, I'm not shocked. Tech X is one of the best teams in the country.
Right. Absolutely.
And they were able to retain the titles. And it did not take long. As soon as that bell rang when the match was over, Owen and Joe immediately locked horns again and went right back
Right.
at it. But at that point, it was okay because they coexisted during the match, and that was the stipulation
Absolutely.
for the cage match next month. And it's already been announced.
Yes.
You've seen the poster got released earlier for SHW 37 coming up on March 4th, and they're going to be inside a steel cage. Owen Knight, Joe Black for the SHW Championship. But
Yeah.
that was not the end of the night, because
Oh,
after they
no.
fought their way to the back, you have Tech X in the ring celebrating,
Mhm.
and a couple of hooded figures. Oh, I forgot to
Mhm.
mention Gary was with us on commentary. There was that.
Well, I was gonna say you guys can watch on IWTV once this hits there to see, of all things, the commentary debut, and I've heard that it could be the first and last. So you'll likely want to see this and hear this of Gary Lamb on commentary during the final match of the show. And that's important because, of course, as you mentioned, it was a night for hooded figures.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Hidden Figures. That's a whole nother movie, a whole nother time, et cetera, et cetera. Appropriate as well. But more hooded figures showing up, and this time they would attack the tag team champions. Now, hooded figures attacking tag teams, something we've seen here in SHW, and we naturally thought that it would be the approved.
I absolutely thought it was the approved, and I was thinking after the last couple months, I'm like, good, maybe we're done with those guys for a while.
Right.
Not to take
But it
anything
would
away
have
from
made,
their
but it would have made sense given, the match they had last month.
after they had lost, to Tech X last month. And again, I don't want to be too mean here, not to take anything away from their talent, but
Sure.
their dastardly ways of going about business, I've kind of had enough of it, So I'm thinking,
For sure.
okay, they lost last month to Tech X. They did not win the titles. Maybe they've moved on. But here they come in the ring. At least that's who we think at first. And it wasn't. Go ahead, GB.
No, it certainly was not, as they attacked, of course, the tag team champions to only remove their hoods, and we discover it's the returning brothers Lynch, Matt and Joey. And so all of a sudden, people are shocked. The general manager gets up from the commentary booth and goes in the ring to confront them. And I know it's his building, his rules. They didn't exactly like that. And they attacked Gary with a low blow, with a steel chair. And while there may be some in the wrestling world that might have wanted to trade places with them for that moment, the reality of it is the people there in Canton kind of lost it. I mean, they
Kinda?
Well, that's an
Kinda?
understatement. So take us back to 1996, Bash at the Beach. When we found out that Hulk Hogan was the third man, it was that level of trash being thrown in the ring, and
It was all
sprayed with stuff.
It was all a blur, but I'm trying to remember. I think I got my Mean Gene line in there, which was
did you?
which was, look at all the crap in this ring.
Yes.
I think I said it. I don't remember. It was a blur.
Oh man.
I wasn't. Nobody was expecting that to happen.
Sure.
In my recollection of 3.5 years of SHW at this point, that has happened one time before, and it was the night the new era formed, and coincidentally attacked Gary Lamb in the middle of the ring and beat him down, and the trash came flying in. And let me just say, while we're talking about it, fans, please do not throw trash. Do not throw anything in the ring. it's just, it's for
It's
everyone's
not
safety,
safe. Yeah. It's not
including
safe.
us, because
Mhm.
we are on the inside of the barricade, as well
Right.
as Diana, Zach the gear
Mm-hmm.
guy, our
Mm-hmm.
camera people.
Right.
Just please don't do that anymore. That was,
Yeah.
I know it was wild and it was raucous and it was just kind of crazy, but let's just refrain next
Yes.
time. I know you were upset. I get
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
but come on,
Yeah. Please, for
please.
all of our safety,
Yeah.
please. Yeah.
So that was kind of how the night ended there, and
Yeah. It's a crazy night.
well, at least the show portion of
The
the
show
night.
portion.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So GB.
Yeah, because then from there, one could argue that the real news began. And so, in case you are unfamiliar with what's been going on in the last week relative to SHW, I want to go ahead and inform you of what's been going on. And what we're going to do is have a discussion because I think it's important that we do just that. So, following the events of SHW 36, I know I ended up talking to several of our fans, which that's not uncommon. We regularly talk to fans after the show, but this particular night, it was a little bit different. There were some very real concerns that were brought up. It turned into a post that hit social media. Then that turned into a well thought out, well documented, and well expressed post from Jabari McIntyre, who I want to shout out, who was an amazing Facebook group on Facebook. And the concerns really dealt with racial insensitivity at the show and throughout varying elements of the presentation of Southern Honor. And so, I thought, and we thought, all of us thought that it was appropriate to have a conversation about it. Now, Dylan has put out a statement on behalf of him, Gary, to talk about the things that Jabari said. And so, what we thought would be appropriate would be to have a conversation. This is the official SHW podcast. And one of the things that has held true over what is now our 2 years, and this is now episode 75, can you believe that? Right, of our podcast is we've not shied away from challenging issues. Go back to our very first year. We were doing a podcast during the pandemic, the launch, the start of the pandemic. And there were, oddly enough, racial issues that happened there involving George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. And we ended up getting into some conversations about this. There was the speaking out movement that happened in 2020 that we dialogued about here on the podcast. So we're not afraid or ashamed to have conversations about this. And so we're going to do this now. I want to start by saying this, and there's a lot of places this can potentially go. The first thing that I want to say is that it is important on behalf of myself personally, on behalf of all of us here, it is important that fans feel very comfortable coming to our shows, feel a part of what we do. At the end of the day, one of the things that the pandemic taught us is that not just in Southern Honor, but in all of pro wrestling, without our fans, what are we doing, right? We all sat through about 18 months of empty arena shows. So we know just how important the fans are. And I think sometimes, in the internet wrestling community, the fans get a bad rap because people say fans don't know what they want. One day they say they want this, the other day they say they want that. And there is a difference between what fans want in terms of in-ring content versus how they want to be treated or how they want to feel as human beings. I think we all can disagree about, what our preference is in the ring in terms of who we think, should be a champion or who we think should be, the person that we like getting featured on the posters and featured in the main events and things like that. We can all disagree on that, and that's part of healthy wrestling talk and sports talk. Hopefully, one thing we can also agree on is the fact that every human, every person should be treated with dignity and respect. That when you come to a sporting event, when you come to an SHW show, there should not be imagery or language or names or anything that should be said or done that would trigger you into a traumatic experience. That should not happen. And so I will say that as an organization, we apologize for those who have had that kind of experience. I'm speaking in a very interesting space as an African American man. I can't imagine you couldn't tell that I was an African American man, right? But as an African American man, I will be completely transparent and tell you that there are things that I have seen over time that have made me go, ooh, that feels a little weird. But I will say that in some cases, there are some spaces where you feel comfortable talking about certain things. In other cases, just like at any job you work, sometimes you feel like, okay, let me say this to the boss, let me express this. And other times you feel like, let me go ahead, go in, do what I'm here to do, and let other things work themselves out. This is one of those cases where the fans began to say some things that I will be very upfront and say needed to be said. I know some people might disagree with that. Oh, and while I'm here, let me say this too. I understand that when we start having conversations about racial sensitivity and issues of race and that type of thing, that some people get defensive. Other people like to say, when we talk about it, we're being divisive. I think it's important that we remove the opportunity to be defensive from our ears and our hearts. I think it's important that there is an understanding that it is possible to hurt somebody and not be aware that you're hurting them. And if you're unaware that you're hurting somebody, that doesn't necessarily mean that you intended to hurt. There's a difference between hurting someone with intentionality and hurting someone by default, right? I think it's important that when we understand that we end up using the proper terms to classify things. So I will be the first to say, I don't believe that any of the things that have happened in Southern Honor have been done with intent to be racially insensitive. I believe that. I would not be working here if I felt like this was a company that believed in being racially insensitive. I just wouldn't. I want to be in the wrestling business, but not that bad. Okay. With that said, I also believe that when there is a lack of awareness, it is possible to do more harm than good. And so I certainly am one of the ones, and there are many others here who are very committed to ensuring that awareness is raised so that we understand, and let me just be really frank, so that we understand that in the African American community, the N-word isn't the only thing that is triggering or offensive. I think we all can agree nobody's going to walk into the ring and drop the N-word, right? But there are things that can be said and done that could be considered microaggressions, that could certainly be triggering, that you may not have thought of because there was a lack of awareness. With that said, I think there are other communities where there is greater awareness. And because there's greater awareness, there are certain terms, there are certain names, there are certain classifications that you've never heard in the 3.5 years of Southern Honor. You've never heard a slip up in the LGBTQ community. That hasn't happened. You haven't heard a slip up in the Asian community. Hasn't happened. And in some other communities, it hasn't happened. Why hasn't it happened? Because there's been an awareness of things you can and can't say. There's an awareness of, what would bring harm to someone. There's an awareness. And so I think the challenge now for us as an organization, individually and collectively, is it's time to raise our awareness on the things that could be offensive to people of color, right? And I say these things because it's important. This is not a regional promotion. Let me go further. This is not merely a local promotion. This isn't a space where what's done in Canton stays in Canton. This isn't Vegas, right? Because of social media, because of platforms like IWTV, because we've been named 3-time promotion of the year, and we've got a ton of award winners who are a part of our organization, there are all sorts of eyes that are on us. AC Mack, 3 weeks ago, becoming the new IWTV world champion, making history. That has not been merely local news. That has literally been international news. So the eyes of the world are paying attention to what we do in Southern Honor. So then if the eyes of the world are paying attention to us, we must then ensure that what we are doing hits the eyes of the world in a way that says to each member of the community that they are respected, they are valued, they are loved, they are seen. Okay? There's more to say, but I've said a lot so far. So Brandon, what would you like to say? And then I may say some more.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for having the courage to come on here and speak your piece like that. I agree wholeheartedly with everything you're saying. And it's one of those things too. Like we've talked off air plenty about this over the last week between you and me and Diana.
Yeah.
And that's all we've been talking about. Just
right.
We need to talk about this on the podcast. And
yeah.
I know GB extended an apology. I personally would like to extend an apology as well. You mentioned that sometimes there are things that people realize or people are aware of, but maybe they just don't say anything. They just kind of want to keep quiet, show up, do their thing. I am one of those people. I'm totally guilty of that. And I do apologize for that. And I hate that it took some of our fans to have to bring it up for something to be done.
Sure.
But that's where we are now. And now is the next step of making sure that those things, a stop is put to those certain things and we do better moving forward. There's a saying that I mentioned to you before, which is you can't do better unless you know better. And well, now we've all been made aware. So we definitely know better now, and there's no excuse for not being able to do better. And so I think that's, that is definitely what we will try our best to do is do better and kind of keep our eye out and be aware. Awareness is the big thing that you said. And we talked about this last Friday night after the show when we were talking to some of our friends after the show. That was one of the big words that came up was awareness. And I'm like you, I don't think that anything done or said was done with a malicious intent. It was just one of those things, sometimes ignorance is bliss, and something, people do something, they don't even realize what I'm doing might be offensive to a person or a whole race of people,
Absolutely.
Like, that's something that, and sometimes I see that stuff and it's shocking to me because I'm like, how do you not realize that that's not offensive? Like, but it is what it is. And again, I'm guilty of not speaking up sooner. I've been there since day one.
Mhm.
What is it, 3.5 years at this point? You've been
Yeah.
came in a year later, so 2.5
Mhm.
years, and like there's
Yeah.
just stuff that we've talked about
Sure.
outside of this show and outside of uh the action building that we've
Right.
discussed, and it's just kind of been one of those things that I know some of this something might make me cringe, but
Sure.
maybe it'll just go away, or maybe
Right.
somebody else will say something, and I am sincerely sorry that I'm
Yeah.
one of those people that didn't speak up sooner,
Yeah.
and didn't say something. And so um, I'm like you, like I never would want any of our fans to feel uncomfortable, or like
Sure.
feel like they've been personally attacked in any kind of certain way,
Right.
or anything like that. So uh, like I said, you can't do better unless you know better, and we definitely
Absolutely.
know better now. So
For sure.
it's all there is left to do is do better. And
And to that, what I think is also important here is I know that there's another section of our fan base that's like, it's just entertainment. Like, what's the problem? We understand wrestling is entertainment. Well, let me help you with something. I think it's important to understand that just because it didn't knock on your door this time doesn't mean that you should operate with a lack of compassion. It's amazing to me how, you know, when other people are sick or other people are going through tough times, people are just like thoughts and prayers, right? Until it's you. When it's you, when it's your family, when it's your neighbors, all of a sudden you want the cavalry to come in. And I think if we are truly what we've dubbed the SHW faithful, then if we find out that a part of our community has been hurt, we want to go ahead and figure out what do we do to fix that, to ensure that. It pained me when I looked at some of the comments that were on Jabari's post. What pained me to see was to hear that there were others who not only did they share his sentiment, but they had decided to stop attending SHW altogether before this ever became a post because of things that they saw that they were uncomfortable with. And that is unfortunate because there's so many things that as an organization we really try to do to give you great content, but great content gets lost if people don't feel comfortable coming to the shows. So let me say this, because this is going to make some people feel uncomfortable, but I think feeling uncomfortable is not a sign that a conversation shouldn't happen.
yeah,
Feeling uncomfortable means that you're unfamiliar with the space you're in, right? Like, for instance, if you're a person like me, I tend to be, and I can't believe I'm going to say this publicly, afraid of heights, right? So because I'm afraid of heights, one of the scariest moments for me is if I'm at an amusement park and I get on a roller coaster. That climb up feels very uncomfortable because I'm not in control. It's an unfamiliar feeling to me, and I'm uncomfortable. All right. But the only way at that point, since I'm strapped in, the only way I'm going to get off is I got to go through the ride.
right.
There's no jumping off on the way up. It's too far up. They're not going to back it down because I decided to get scared. I got on the ride. So this is what we're in for. And so here's what I want to tell you. I know there are some people who feel as though, man, there's absolutely how could you feel uncomfortable in the action building? How could you feel uncomfortable at SHW? Well, if you don't, that's good. That's very good. But I want to tell you a story about what it's like for me to make the drive to Canton every month. And it's not just me, it's people who look like me. When we decide we're going to come to Southern Honor, we come because we really want to watch wrestling and we want to see it live. And it's going to be some amazing wrestling that's happening. But I personally, when I make my drive almost an hour into Canton, I gas up before I get there. I am fully gassed by the time I leave. I do not stop. I don't stop at a gas station. I don't stop to eat. I don't stop. It is go there, come home. And you might ask, well, why? We love our wonderful city of Canton. Absolutely nothing against the city of Canton. But here's the reputation that the city of Canton currently has. And boy, some people are going to get mad at me, but you have to understand this piece to understand the relevance of this. There is the real possibility that I could get stopped. And if I get stopped, I might make it home. I might not make it home. And it's not because I've done anything wrong. It's because there's the possibility that I could fit a certain profile. And you guys, well, what are you talking? I'm telling you what I have lived. And what you have to understand is just because it's not your experience doesn't mean that it's not an experience, right? And so because that's my experience, when I decide to come to Canton to watch SHW, to be a part of SHW, I don't want to get there and then be reminded of what I had to deal with potentially outside of the doors. So that's why language becomes important. That's why how we care for each other becomes important. That's why names become important. That's why awareness becomes important. You would hate to do something that you meant in good faith towards me or anyone who looks like me that isn't received as such because what you thought was good really wasn't. There was a situation that happened that I'm actually not going to talk about that I was directly impacted by that also happened Friday from folks who meant well and they were unaware that what their good intentions were was actually offensive, was actually triggering to me. Yeah, before any of the events that actually happened inside the Action Building took place, before any of the fans got there, I was already carrying weight in doing the show. But nobody knew. You guys didn't know. Like Brandon and Diana knew, but nobody else knew, right? And I think people have to understand that when there is awareness, then there are certain things. So I'm going to give you a quick example. One of the things I was taught as a child and as an adult is, number one, you don't ask a woman her age. Simple things, right? You don't ask a woman her age. You don't ask a woman if she's pregnant. Hello, lights, right? Like those are two very simple things. That is awareness, okay? Awareness, because you might not mean anything bad when you ask a woman her age. Your intent might be to say, well, hey, you look amazing, but no woman wants to hear that she's old. No woman wants to be called pregnant that isn't pregnant. I don't think I have to explain anything on that, right? It is that level of awareness that we have to have about everybody. And for some people, it's like, that's a lot of work. No, it's not a lot of work. It's called treating others with dignity and with respect. That's what that's called. So I think about, and let me say this. This is one of the reasons why we're talking about this, because this isn't just something for the internal crew at SHW to work on. This is for the SHW faithful to work on. This is for all of us to work on. I'll give you an example. Awareness is a never-ending class. If you're taking notes, write that down. I know it's a podcast. Who takes notes on a podcast? You might want to write that down. Awareness is a never-ending class. Why am I saying that? I'm going to give you an example. If we're going to stick to the world of pro wrestling, the way that certain individuals were presented in the world of wrestling 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, have changed dramatically. And it's changed because there's been an understanding that if you're going to treat this human with dignity and respect, there are certain names you can't call them. There are certain terms you can't use. If you go back to some of the commentary from, the 80s and the 90s, there were things that were done then. There's no way they could be done right now, because we have an enlightened understanding that says that does not treat that person as a human being. So one of the new things in terms of awareness that we're having to grab onto is a thing called pronouns. Like, people didn't used to think about pronouns, but we're in a space now where we have a community of people that some people may not want to be called he. Some people may not want to be called she. I believe Demi Lovato doesn't want either pronoun. Demi Lovato wants to be called they. So it becomes personally disrespectful if I refer to Demi Lovato in a way that she doesn't want to be referred to. That makes sense? So with that said, I think it becomes now intrinsic upon all of us to do the work. Cody Rhodes talks about doing the work. We've got to do the work to ensure that we are treating every person with dignity and respect. So we need to understand, if Sunny Kiss right now wants to be called she, we will call Sunny Kiss she, because that's how she wants to be known. Doesn't matter what you think about it personally or anything else. That's what she wants to be called. And so with that said, it's important to learn why certain terms. I'll give you an example, which when I give you this example, you're going to understand my point very, very clearly. There is another wrestling promotion. I guess I could mention them. Why not, right? The WWE has a major pay-per-view coming up next Saturday, right? It's called Elimination Chamber. We would be having a pure fit if they changed the name of it to Gas Chamber. Yeah, everybody's, ugh. Why? Because you understand what the gas chambers did, how they were used to attempt to exterminate an entire people group. That's awareness, my friends. That's awareness. So the WWE says, we're not going to call this gas chamber. We're going to call it Elimination Chamber. And when they call it Elimination Chamber, nobody thinks all of the thoughts you just thought when I said gas chamber. It's that kind of awareness that's necessary. And if it sounds like a lot, then that means we just have to love on people better. And if it seems like work, it's work worth doing. And if it's not work that you want to do, then you probably shouldn't be in a business like this that's people interfacing, because at the end of the day, this is a people business. Awareness. It's the name of the game.
Awareness. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on here and just laying it out there like that. And we've talked about this off air before. Like,
yeah,
Diane and I both tell you all the time that just the way you lay things out and can put it out there and explain, and that you're just very articulate with how you put things. And I appreciate it very much. And I hope that people listening are taking it to heart and actually listening
yes,
to everything that's been said tonight.
I'm glad that you said that, because as I said earlier, I know that sometimes people start calling conversations like this divisive. Why do you have to talk about that? Let's just come together. Well, you can't come together until you know what's separating you. Yeah. And I hear people, let me go ahead and kill another sacred cow while we're here. There are people who make statements, and I just want people to get clarity on what some of these statements mean. Like, there are people who will say, I'm colorblind. I don't see color. Let me tell you, I understand the intent of what you're trying to say. But when you tell me you don't see color and you are colorblind, what you're really saying is, I'm invisible. You're saying you don't see me. You're saying that the things that make me different are not worthy of you acknowledging. No, I didn't say that. No, that's actually how that's being translated. Let's learn to say things like this. Yeah, I do see color. And I appreciate what is different about you. I appreciate that your skin is different and that your experiences are different, because it adds to my whole plethora of experiences. It makes me a more diverse person, because now I get to understand somebody who's not like me. That enriches my life. To say that I don't see your color, your history, no, no, no. Let's get out of the habit of saying things like that, because when we talk about awareness, that's one of those things that lacks awareness. It means well, but means well, because here's the thing. Case in point, perfect example. You've got Kevin Ryan, which, let me go there. So Kevin Ryan has an unfortunate accident, which is clearly what that was, and tears his meniscus. There were people who had some derogatory things to say about Kevin Ryan and why that happened. That too is a lack of awareness. If somebody breaks a bone in a wrestling match, that has nothing to do with any of these ridiculous theories that were out there. And to try to malign his character as a human being because he had an injury in the ring and perhaps you didn't understand, that shows a lack of awareness. So really, this moment is calling for all of us to become better human beings. It's calling for us to become better people. And so I want you to think about this. The accident that Kevin had, we now know is going to cause months of rehabilitation, right? If he's put into a cast, he doesn't just come back to wrestling. There's a process called healing that has to happen, right? Because he's been injured. And so what I want people to understand is this, and I'm going to say this because some other people may not. I understand that by saying we apologize, that is putting a cast on the break. If your leg has been broken, we just put a cast on it. But now we have to give you the time to heal. Just like Kevin is going to need time to heal, to be able to recuperate and recover, we have to give people time to heal. And so the things that we do in the coming days are going to be our way of providing physical therapy to the injury you've suffered. It's that simple. So there will be those who say, can we just get back to wrestling? Because we didn't come here for that. Well, here's the deal. If we got solely back to wrestling and did not have this conversation, there'd be an entire people group that would say, I knew Southern Honor, they didn't care about us. I knew our concerns didn't matter to them. I'm not willing to let that happen. Brandon isn't willing to let that happen. Diana isn't willing to let that happen. Dylan, we aren't willing to let that happen. This is that important. And so I'm going to challenge those who say, well, I don't understand why folks are offended. Consider this. If your leg gets broken and we offer you an apology, you will accept the apology. You'll accept the cast, but you also have to heal. And I need us with the same level of sensitivity we would have in terms of not expecting Kevin to get back in the ring and start doing flips and being brain dead. We can't expect people who have been injured to all of a sudden be okay so that it protects our fragility. Yes, I said it. We can't expect that. There are a people group who have been hurt and injured, not just by what has happened in this, but by life itself, by what happens outside of the action building. So when they come inside the action building and get injured, yes, it hurts. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it hurts. Give people an opportunity to heal. And so to Jabari, to the nation, man, I'm sorry that this has been the experience. And equally, I am appreciative, incredibly appreciative for the courage. And I told you this privately, so you know this is how I feel. For the courage it took to write that, for the courage it took to express it, for the stance you have taken. I honor that. We talk about honor. I honor that. I respect that. And I appreciate that. And for the others who have felt that way. And so I hope that you will receive what we are saying as the cast, right? We're having this conversation not with the intent that you're coming back to the action building for SHW 37, because this is bigger than that. I want you to know that you've been heard. And I want others who are unaware to become aware, so that at SHW 37 and 47 and 57, there's a more diverse crowd, because there's an understanding that all really are welcome, and that we are aware. We are aware. We are aware. We are aware. Those things matter. And because they matter, that's why we're having this conversation. So just remember, an apology is a cast. If we don't apologize, we're just leaving you out there with fragmented bones. And who does that? Certainly not us. So there you have it.
Awareness.
Awareness. That's the name of the game.
Awareness, the name of the game. Absolutely, GB. Well, thank you so much for your words of wisdom here tonight. And fans, thank you for joining us once again here on the SHW podcast. And as we do from time to time, we get away from the kayfabe and get real a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, and this was definitely one of those situations where we weren't just going to not say anything. So,
Oh no.
so glad, you know, and like I said, we've been talking about it all week privately, you and I and Diana as well. And so glad we were able to get on here and chop it up a little bit. So
Absolutely.
that's going to do it for this
Yeah.
week's episode. And as GB mentioned, as we mentioned at the top of the show, SHW 37 is coming up March 4th.
Mm-hmm.
And we, of course, will be talking more about that in the coming weeks as that gets a little closer. So, awareness.
Awareness.
Name of the game.
Yes.
Just be aware, folks. And like I said, you can't do better till you know better. And hey, we've all been made aware. Now we know better.
Yes.
So let's all
And
do
we
better.
shall do better. That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. Well, hey, until we see you next time, this has been SHW.
This is our wrestling.